Hi, this is Byron.
And this is Chantal.
And welcome to In Your Face!
I think you should wait to have sex after you're married, because if you have sex before you're married and when you actually find that special someone, you're gonna have less of yourself to give to them.
I think to not risk being used and emotional breakdowns and such, it's smarter to wait.
If it's between you and the person, you don't really have to prove to anyone else that you two are getting married. It's just you and your spouse.
So, we're in the parking lot. What do you want to do?
I don't know. What do you want to do?
Byron, what are you doing?
What?
True love has to wait.
I don't get it.
No, sex, Byron. We're talking about sex.
Oh, I get it. Why does sex have to wait?
Yeah, if you truly love someone, then why do you have to wait to have sex until you get married?
So we're finally talking about love?
Love, sex, and relationships.
Personally, I think that you can be with a relationship with a person, a romantic one, and still not have to have sex, because most people think that it's the exciting thing of a relationship, which I believe is not true, because you can do so much things with the person you love and still have fun.
Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Your anointing oils are fragrant. Your name is perfume poured out. Therefore the maidens love you. Draw me after you. Let us make haste. The king has brought me into his chamber. We will exult and rejoice in you. We will extol your love more than wine. Song of Solomon. Wow. This is in the Bible?
I think the church kind of gives us guidelines to follow. Not so much so on you can't do this, no, always no, 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 but it's more like this is your choice, but follow it. And it's kind of a good way, because then if you don't have sex till marriage, you have lesser chance of dealing with.
What exactly does marriage, what happens once I get married? Am I any more in love after the priest says, kiss this person, than I was the day before or the day after?
And you mentioned choice, right? That's what the media and the world says. It's your choice. Then why not take advantage of it?
The media paints this totally bizarre picture of sex. Look at any music video where it's just these girls in scantily clad, dressed their little outfits, and they're just paraded around for guys to look at. The media paints this very objectified and very emotionless picture of what sex is, and it's totally not what sex is supposed to be like. So it's really confusing being a young person in the world today, because you have all of these messages that a woman should be like this, and a woman's meant to just allure and attract, and guys are just supposed to fall all over her, and it's not how God created our men and female roles to be, right?
It seems to me that the church is always saying no. No to this, no to that. When it comes to sex, it's even more apparent. What does the church say about sex? Well, that's a definite no. Or is it?
The church doesn't say no to sex. In fact, the church says a big yes to sex in the right context.
The context of marriage.
Yeah, so we should probably talk about marriage.
Sex, relationships, happiness. Let's face it, they're things that we all think about. We wonder what kind of relationship will make me happy. We wonder where sexuality fits into our relationships. And we know that this is an area where the Catholic Church's view and society's view definitely differ. Society would seem to want to make sex very free and has to be part of a relationship. The Catholic Church says that sex is something different. What do we believe? If we're going to talk about this, we have to start by understanding what the Catholic Church really teaches. Our society tells us that sex is just between us. It's something that we decide for ourselves. The Church says that God has some ideas here. that God has a plan for sexuality. As Catholics, we believe that we are created in God's image and likeness, that He made us male and female for a reason. And we believe that God gave us the gift of sexuality. So sexuality then is a holy thing, created by God and given to His people. And we believe that God has a plan for sexuality as well, and that in His plan, the sexual expression of love belongs between a man and a woman who are married to one another. And that in that holy relationship of married love, God uses the gift of sexuality to bring about new life.
I think sex is one of the most amazing gifts that God has given us. And it should be done with someone that you truly love and that God has united together with marriage.
If someone called you a sexy Christian, would you be offended? Well, if sexuality is a part of who I am and Christianity is a part of who I am, then why not be a sexy Christian? Or rather, what does it mean to be a sexy Christian?
I just look back on myself when I was like even 18, 19, and I was with the guy and it was pretty serious. And I was like, I could get married. I could get married tomorrow, and was I misguided? Now that I look back at it now a few years later, I realize probably wouldn't have been the most realistic. I wouldn't have had money, I wouldn't have had a place to stay, all those things wouldn't have had, but emotionally I was ready, and I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling as well. So, I don't know, it's kind of
I think what your question is, I don't know, I think with the way society pushes sex and stuff, we're always asking, am I ready to have sex? Is it now the time and stuff? But we don't really ask, am I ready to get married? I don't really think we understand I don't think our education system, I don't think our church really teaches marriage and what it means and stuff. Because maybe we shouldn't be asking, when should I have sex? But maybe we should be asking, when should I be getting married? Mm-hmm. And you see how people treat marriage, people getting divorced after 3 months of marriage.
Yeah, they gotta treat marriage a little bit more important than what it is, because now they're like, oh yeah, get married, done, out of there, if it doesn't work out. But the point of that, it's for you to resolve the situation together as a couple. That's why you're that's what you're joined in marriage for. What God unites, you can't take away like that. You know what I mean? It's forever. Forever means forever. In God's time, there's no forever. It's like.
So then that's the essential difference, the fact that God has created this union.
Before we talk about marriage, we should probably talk about why people want to have sex before marriage.
It's not really that important.
Because they can express their love.
So that I know that we're sexually compatible.
Why not? Feels good, do it.
If I love him, then it's okay to express my love.
Some people think that sex is something bad, base, instinctual, something of the animals. Even people who think that sex is a good thing don't think of it as anything more than pleasurable. No wonder it's used for a marketing tool for pretty much everything. If I was to tell you that sex is a beautiful prayer meant to help you love and know God, that'd be weird?
There are a couple of other things that we have to ask ourselves. We say that we want to be happy, but what do we mean by happiness? Do I mean something that will give me pleasure right here and now, or do I mean something a little longer lasting? We live in a society that lives practically for immediate gratification. A society that tends not to think in terribly long terms. Something 20 or 30 years ago is now a classic. But God thinks in rather longer terms. When God speaks of happiness, He isn't talking necessarily just about now, just about today. He's talking about a lifetime and beyond. The old catechism used to teach us that God made us to know Him, to love Him, and to serve Him in this life, and to be happy with Him forever in the next. The happiness that God wants for us is the happiness that comes from being at peace with Him now and into eternity. And let's ask ourselves pretty honestly, when I know that I've done something that is contrary to God's will for my life, when I know that I have done something that is sinful, am I really happier? Do I really like myself better or look at myself as a better person because of it? And with the use of sexuality that's so prevalent in our society, has it really made our society better, happier, more peaceful? I don't think so.
Last year, an estimated 14,000 babies were born to girls 14 years of age or younger. These girls aren't strangers. They're girls we know. They are girls in our families. And this isn't even counting the pregnancies that ended in abortion.
Sex is confusing. It's the one thing that the world seems to make so complex, but seems so simple to me.
Let's hear from some experienced undercover Catholics.
Here's today's cool cat.
Wow.
Hi, my name is David Kantor, and I played on the Canadian national volleyball team for 5 years, from '97 to 2002. We didn't get to the Olympics, unfortunately, but we got to the World Cup and World Championships, traveled all over the world. It was really a dream come true. Since I was a young guy, I'd go watch these guys play volleyball, the national team, and look so much up to them. And when I actually got to the national team, I found myself playing actually beside the guys I'd got autographs of. It was incredible. Every time we'd stand on the court before a match, listening to the national anthem, looking at our flag, I would just thank God so much for giving me the gifts to get there and to represent my whole country. It was such an honor and such a thrill, really. The following of volleyball in Canada is not that great, but when you go to countries like Brazil, Argentina, Japan, people are crazy about volleyball, and we come off our bus to the hotel and we're mobbed by people asking for autographs and playing in front of 20,000 people, usually cheering against us, but still gets you pumped up. Being a Catholic has been an important part of my life, my whole life, and that's carried into my volleyball career as well. When I was on the national team, we'd travel across the world, and the first thing I do when I go to a hotel was find out from the hotel people where the nearest Catholic church was, because I wanted to go to church on Sunday. So I was actually the only Christian on my team, and guys noticed this, and so they called me Church from that on. Being a Catholic, though, has helped me get through the tough training. We train 6 hours a day, usually pushing ourselves beyond our limits, and I'd be saying prayers constantly through practice to try and get through these drills. It also helped me a lot through, I guess, to cope with the lifestyle that came with volleyball, which there was a lot of going out drinking and sexual temptation. My faith, without my faith, I don't think I could have not fallen into that lifestyle. It also helped me a lot with my, I guess you could say, staying grounded. I always recognized where my gifts came from, and that was often a problem with our team, the egos. Guys would come from all over the country, they were the best, and they'd come on the national team and not everyone was the best anymore. So there's a lot of ego problems, and I think my faith helped me recognize my gifts were all from God, and I was able to not think I was the best, but know that I was just a vehicle for God's gifts, and so staying more like a team player, you could say, not thinking of myself, but thinking of the team. I'm actually retired from the national volleyball team now, and mostly because of injuries. I had a knee operation, a shoulder operation. It's really hard on the body, volleyball is. So I stopped national team in 2002, and I looked for a job, and now I'm an environmental engineer. Having fun with that, using my school now, my education, playing a little bit of recreational volleyball, and actually having a lot of fun being involved in the church, organizing youth events, being involved with youth, especially since World Youth Day. And that's something I couldn't do when I was playing volleyball. Now I'm able to get involved with that, and it's bringing me a lot of joy.
So where are we?
Okay. Sex is not just about pleasure. Sex is not bad. Sex is a gift of God. Sex is a sacrament.
You know, that's pretty cool. You know how marriage is the sacrament? Well, I used to think that it was the marriage ceremony that was the sacrament. You know, like baptism. But if marriage is the sacrament...
Marriage is the sacrament.
Yeah, but wait, but if marriage is the sacrament and sex is a part of marriage...
Well, there's no marriage without any sex.
Yeah, well, maybe then the act of sex, lovemaking, is the sacrament.
Wow, that's amazing.
And weird.
It seems like our whole culture just holds these ideals up. Like a guy, for the longest time, was judged based upon how many people he has sex with, or like how quickly he could get a girl into bed. And for a long time, the girl was always like seen as like this castle that the knight was, you know, holding off and stuff. And now it just seems like instead of lifting us up, our standards have gone down. Women have been brought down to the standards of guys, where it's just like how many guys can you sleep with, and now it's like a competition.
So we're getting all these images, we're getting these messages. Like, what is it about that getting married, maybe when you're later, that makes it different? That what's changed in you as a person that makes you more ready to have sex when you're married and when you're older, as opposed to when you're a kid and you're just, young?
I think more of that, when you find that someone, you want to spend time with them, you want to get to know them, that whole initial stage to know whether they are the right one first. And then you find out that, yeah, they are the right one, but then you want to travel together or do stuff together, and then maybe once it hits you, wait a minute, I think we want to start a family. That's when you're kind of like, marriage? Starts coming into play and everything, because sex is something, it's like a commitment, right, together, that show that you are binding together and you're like, ooh, let's have a family.
But I think that's the key difference between being 13 and wanting to have sex and then being in a place where you're ready to commit to a marriage and to a family and wanting to have sex. I think when you're younger, or just when you're not in that mindset of commitment, sex is pleasurable. It's in the moment. It's something that's just there for you.
Lots of people say that sex is about love. If I love someone, shouldn't I be able to express my love to them in the most intimate way? But is sex just about love?
Sex is a beautiful prayer. In giving ourselves entirely to another person, we give ourselves to God. At the same time, we partake in the mystery of creation. We become co-creators with God.
It's often thought that the church's teachings on sexuality are just there to keep me bound, that society's view of sex gives me real freedom, whereas the church takes away my freedom. The church is just trying to keep me from the joy of having sex, of being able to express myself, of being able to do what I want. Well, being able to do what I want is not necessarily freedom. The church's teachings, far from taking away my freedom, give me true freedom. The church's teachings on sexuality are there to safeguard the sanctity of marriage and the holiness of God's gift of sexuality. The church's teachings exist to help me live the way that God created me to live, to help me live by His ideas, by His will. They're not just arbitrary laws made up by men to keep me enslaved. Rather, the church's teachings express to us the law of God that comes to us in sacred scripture and through the living tradition of His church. And that law is a law of freedom. The freedom to live as children of God, destined for eternal happiness. What society presents to us is an illusion. The illusion of freedom.
Sex is more than just about love. It's about commitment and permanence. It's about creation and growth. It's an outward sign of inward grace, a sign of a gift of God, the gift of love and creation, in which we become the image of God, God the lover and God the creator.
Sexuality isn't just sex. It's a lot of other things. It's the way you dress, it's the way you talk, and even I think about too, even specific. For example, if I got, this is really random, but if I got really aroused by being kissed on my elbow, even though you wouldn't think that that's necessarily it's so sinful, your elbow, oh no, right? But I think you really have to think more in the context of, does it make the other person aroused? Even if it's something you'd think, it's just the elbow, it's something simple or whatever, right? I think you really need to think when you're in a relationship before marriage, you have to think, protecting that person's purity as much as possible, even in ways that I wouldn't think, a person would get aroused,
Okay, but the whole thing that I struggle with that is that I agree, it's important to be chaste, but maybe this is my own pride or something, but I like to know that the person I'm going out with is aroused by me. And I would like to do things that I think other people wouldn't be able to do to arouse her. And if you take that away, I don't know, I might feel insecure about my relationship.
Well, okay, we're talking, you guys mentioned this word arousal, but arousal is not only physical, correct? Right? For me, I know personally, it's a mental thing, it's a spiritual thing even. Because I know one of the sexiest things I could do with a girlfriend is go to church with her. I don't know, and for me, that just is nuts, right? Because it's so atypical, it's so against the norm, and because when you get married, right, it's not you and this other person marrying each other. You're getting married in the sight of God. That's the third thing. That's I think that's the essential difference, right? The inclusion of God, that it's not me and you, it's me, you, with God.
I totally hear what you guys are saying, and I totally agree with being chaste and stuff. It just seems like it's such a thin line that you gotta walk sometimes, because you do wanna, if you have a boyfriend, well, you have a boyfriend, if I have a girlfriend, I want it to be something special and different from my other friendships that I have. I don't know.
And for me, that's intimacy and that's trust. And to know that you can be with someone and not think that, oh my gosh, I have to have sex soon or else the opportunity will pass. To have as much trust in that relationship, to think that we're going to be together for a while, so we can wait, to have that trust. And I think that's where a lot of these young kids, they're trying to grasp at things that might not be there for long, right? And I think they're trying to fill themselves and trying to be happy in that certain way. But I think, for me, I try to think, what's going to make me happy in the long term?
I really want to give it up to God. I mean, to come up with something like sex, that's pretty cool. I mean, he could have had us procreate by like pollinating or splitting like amoebas or something, but no. We participate with him in the act of creation by partaking with him in the act of love. How can the two be separate?
Let's see what some modern day saints have been up to.
Here's today's saint of the new millennium.
If people use the question, does true love have to wait, to mean, do you have to wait to have sex until you're married? Then what does it mean for people that give up sex altogether, like Paul, a young seminarian?
I think today a lot of people think that the church has a very evil and bad view of sexuality, that you're supposed to repress it and don't do this, don't do that. But I think people should find out the beauty of the church's teaching and of Christ's teaching of sexuality, how beautiful it is.
Chastity is not a common word in today's language. Lust, however, you can find that anywhere. You can't walk down the street without seeing a bit of skin. Apparently, seminarians aren't exempt to this struggle.
Last summer, I went through a very difficult time I was in the seminary already, and I went through a very difficult time with regards to lust. Can I be chaste forever, And I had a very, in a way, disordered view of sexuality, and I didn't want that. I didn't want it. I knew that the church gave us a beautiful teaching on sexuality, but I didn't know that teaching, and went to a confession, and he told me to listen to something while I'm working, because that's when I was, I guess, tempted the most. So I remembered that I purchased the Theology of the Body a few months back, and I started listening to it, and it was the most freeing experience I've ever had. It just gave me such a different view of the body, of sexuality, of marriage.
So, the theology of the body is what I need? What's that?
The Pope John Paul II's Theology of the Body is my greatest inspiration. Whenever I do have temptation and I'm tempted to look at the body as something, as an object, I run back to the Theology of the Body and Christopher West, who took the Pope's Theology of the Body and brought it down to our level. It's an inspiration just to see that you can live the truth of the body, and it's possible.
But that's not the end of it. Having a well-rounded life keeps Paul going in the right direction.
Hanging out with friends, especially when I go back home for visits from the seminary. I love getting together with friends and being together with them, especially on retreats. I go on retreats quite often with young people, and I think that's the highlight of the highlight of my year, I guess. Every year I go on retreats, and they just give me so much joy just to see that, especially when a young person finds Christ. And I love going around Europe, especially going back to Poland, where I'm from, and going into Tatry Mountains. My desire, I guess, is to be a holy priest. Seminarians are discouraged nowadays with regards to people saying that celibacy is unhealthy. But I think it's a beautiful way to live a life, giving yourself completely to Christ and His church. And I think that's what we need for the future.
If Paul can give up the joys of marriage in one lifetime, surely we can wait some time for true love. I just hope I don't have to wait too long.
There are lots of reasons to wait.
It's important to me.
Because I'm not ready.
Because saving sex for marriage is a gift.
Because I should be able to control my urges.
Because I love him, I will wait.
The illusion of freedom is not my original line. It's been used before, but it certainly speaks to the point. Our society, when it speaks of sex, does present an illusion of freedom. Our society tells us that sex is just sex, that it's okay anytime, anywhere, and between pretty much anyone. Our society would tell us that casual sex is just fine, and this is supposed to make us free, but it certainly hasn't done anything of the sort. Instead, we've seen an increase in venereal diseases, in teenage pregnancies. We've seen an increase in abortions, what Pope John Paul II calls the culture of death. We see people time and again who are depressed, who feel empty, who seek for love in all the wrong places, to use the words of an old song. Sex is never just sex. It wasn't designed that way. We weren't built that way. I remember once taking a group of young people to a youth conference at the University of Steubenville, Ohio. And one of the speakers said to us that sex speaks the language of commitment. And it truly does. God designed that into us when He made us. Sex does speak the language of commitment, and that's why He intends that the sexual expression of love be used between a couple who have been committed to one another by Him in the sacrament of marriage. God's view, the Church's view of sexuality, gives us true freedom. The freedom to give ourselves to the person whom we love. The freedom to give ourselves to one person to whom we will be committed for life before God. And for younger people, chastity gives us the freedom to dump losers.
I think sex is the best gift that I could ever give anybody. It's the one thing that I can truly, fully give to somebody else. It's the only thing I can really say is truly mine, and I can give it fully to someone else. I'm excited for the day when I get to give it away.
I always feel like it's not enough.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that Jesus suffered for us, died for us on the cross, just so we could have coping mechanisms. I think He died to make us free.
That makes sense. Free from all lust and sexual temptation.
Yeah, but it's not easy.
I know. I just wish I could go around and not have to see sex, sex, sex everywhere I go.
And I don't want to have to be ashamed of my body. You know, I don't think it's a coincidence that God chose to come to us in a human body, and then that He gave us His body to eat. There must be something amazing about our bodies.
I never thought about it like that. God came to us through our bodies, so we should be able to get to God through our bodies.
Yeah, and love and sexuality are just a part of that, of how we relate to each other and are able to grow in love.
It's not easy to do.
But we have to. I guess that's why we have each other, to help us be holy.
Yeah.